Right, day 2 of your fasting challenge. Today, eating window will be the same as yesterday. That means that the beginners and new people, this will be eating at 1 o'clock until 8 o'clock. The people who have done this before, we're doing straight into the warrior diet, which is a 4-hour eating window. Again, tomorrow I'll break down the reasons why we do this and why there's 2 different levels and why it's important to start off at the beginner level. Now, in this video today, I want to talk about hydration, dehydration and hydration, and why we are starting for the beginners at 1 o'clock, the 7-hour eating window, not straight into the 4. Somebody's saying, oh, I want to lose more weight, I'll go straight into it. It's getting your body adapted to these things. Now, the first thing we need to understand is, if any of you are getting headaches, tiredness, or a feeling of hunger just because you haven't eaten until 1 o'clock, it's not hunger. You are dehydrated, right? You got to understand what hydration is and how it works and how food operates in the body. Because a lot of people fail at fasting because of these things. I get headaches, I'm too tired, and especially this thing, I'm too hungry. Guys, as long as there's body fat in your body, you're not hungry, right? You're not actual hungry. I am going to die, I'm going to pass out, faint because I don't have any food. That's not the reality, right? So what happens here, whenever we eat carbohydrates, specifically carbohydrates are broken down into glucose. So we eat a carbohydrate, say bread, pasta, potatoes, whatever. We digest it in the stomach. It's then broken down into its basic molecule, which is glucose, just pure sugar. Glucose then goes into the blood. This is how that energy gets from your stomach to the cells that need the energy via glucose. Glucose travels through your blood, or you might hear it said as blood sugar. So your blood glucose levels are your blood sugar levels. Now your body's constantly trying to maintain a balanced blood sugar, not too high, not too low. So therefore you're not going hyperglycemic and you're not going hypoglycemic. Hyperglycemia is too much sugar. Hypo means too low blood sugar. So the body's constantly trying to play this balancing game of keeping your blood sugar levels level. So let's say we consume this carbohydrate meal. We add sugar or glucose to the blood. That means the amount of blood sugars, the amount of blood glucose goes up, the amount of sugar in your blood goes up. The pancreas realizes this. The pancreas realizes, so shit, blood sugar levels going up. I'm going to release insulin. Insulin's job, the pancreas's job, is to regulate that blood sugar. You get that blood sugar, that blood glucose level back down to normal. How it does this is insulin will go to all the cells in your body, specifically your muscle cells, and it'll say to the cells, can you open up and allow me to store this glucose or this sugar into the cell? All right. So insulin comes and does that. Insulin will be elevated depending on the amount of blood sugar that's gone up. So blood sugar goes really, really high. Insulin has to go really, really high because it's got to store all this energy in the cells. So it says to the muscles, can you open up and store it? So then the muscles will open up, the cells will open up, let the blood glucose in. As the energy comes in, that energy, that sugar, that glucose is then stored in the muscle in the form of glycogen. So it converts it into glycogen. You don't really, it's glycolysis, there's no need to understand why, but that's just what it's called. So if you hear me saying glycogen depletion, it's just basically the stored muscle energy, which was basically glucose, which was basically your carbohydrates. The carbohydrates, glucose in the blood, glycogen stored in the muscle as glycogen. So the muscle stores this glycogen. When the muscle stores glucose as glycogen, it also retains water. So 1 gram of glycogen, again that's the carbohydrates that's stored in the muscle, will retain or hold or absorb between 3 and 4 grams of water. So that glycogen coming into the cell keeps the muscle hydrated because it's now keeping water in the muscle. Intermuscular hydration, because water is hydrating the muscle. Does that make sense? Right. So when we go a long time with no food, we're fasting or keto, we are abstaining from carbohydrates. So we're not eating the carbohydrates, it's not getting stored as glucose, and then therefore it's not getting stored as glycogen in the muscle. So the muscle will now be glycogen depleted. Now when there's no glycogen, there's no fluid, because it needs glycogen to hold the fluid. If there's no glycogen holding fluid, then that muscle becomes dehydrated. It's not hydrated anymore because there's no glycogen to keep the water. Now the worst thing to think of here is if I drink more water. If you drink more water, you will just pass more water through, because you need some way to retain the fluid or the water in the muscle to keep you hydrated. Does that make sense? Now, When we don't have any glycogen to retain the water, what we can use here is sodium, salt, not table salt. When I say salt, I do not mean table salt. Table salt's not actually salt, it's just pure iodine. We're talking about rock salt, Himalayan salt, sea salt, Celtic salt, the pure form of salt, the stuff you have to grind out. So anything with a rock you have to grind, that's salt, that's pure salt. That contains between 82 and 86 minerals. It's those minerals that will be absorbed into the muscle via what was called a sodium potassium pump. Again, no need for technicalities, but that then will keep the water, the salt that you take will keep the water then inside the muscle, which will keep you hydrated. You've heard of electrolytes. Right? Electrolytes is basically salt. Salt is an electrolyte. It's an electrolyte because the muscle needs water for the electric current from the brain, nervous system to the muscle to activate. So the brain's telling that muscle to activate through your nervous system. It's basically an electric current, right? So it's an electrolyte, all right? It's electrolytes that help to keep the body hydrated, so that signal can work really well. All right. So sodium is probably is the best form of that. So when we take in salt, the salt goes into the muscle. That muscle then will retain fluid the same way that glycogen did. Not as much, but it will. All right, so that's why we have to stay hydrated. When your muscles dehydrated, when you're dehydrated, you being dehydrated means your muscles being dehydrated, because that's where you store the fluid. You don't store it in your stomach, you don't store it in your bladder, and that's the water then that you're going to excrete. Now remember, at this time when you're dehydrated, if you were to drink more water, all you will do is dilute down any electrolytes that you still have there, because again, there's no way for it to be retained inside the muscle. Now whenever the body wants something, whenever it's lacking something, whenever it's like dehydrated, whenever it needs water, whenever it needs sodium, whenever it needs some sort of glycogen, some sort of thing in the muscle, it will release a hormone in the stomach called ghrelin. Ghrelin is what we perceive as hunger. It's just a hormone that's saying, go get me something, there's something lacking. So if you're dehydrated, or if you're glycogen depleted, or if you need some substance, it doesn't matter what it is, the body will send this signal. You're perceiving that as hunger. I'm slightly dehydrated. Oh shit, my stomach's grumbling and making this noise and this feeling. I'm hungry, I need food, I'm going to die, I've got this feeling. No, it's dehydration. If you keep the body hydrated from the second you wake up, so when we wake up, we're taking our apple cider vinegar, we're taking our salt and our water, we're drinking that straight away. So as soon as we wake up, we are hydrating the body. If we hydrate the body, we can go a long time without feeling that hunger, the ghrelin feeling, because the ghrelin's been satisfied, because the body's got everything it needs inside it. All right. Remember, we're not designed to eat food every day or multiple times a day, which is why we store fat very easily. So then, think about that scenario we talked about, the body storing the glycogen, or the glucose as glycogen. Let's say, for example, in this scenario where you ate a lot of carbohydrates, or you ate carbohydrates a couple hours ago and now you're eating carbohydrates again, and the muscle cells are full because they can only hold so much. Like I'm 14 and a half stone, I'm quite muscular. My body, if let's say I did a circuit training class, a total body workout, and I completely depleted myself of glycogen, I mean completely, no energy left, not a thing, I can't scratch my fucking nose, the whole body's gone. About 60 grams or 70 grams of carbohydrates, which is less than a bag of rice, microwave rice, will completely saturate my entire body with glycogen or glucose or carbohydrates. I'm full, can't store anymore. Muscles are completely saturated, I'm good to go. Any carbohydrates I eat above and beyond that point, they can no longer fit in the cell. The body will try and put a wee bit in the liver, but the liver's very small. The liver can only hold a couple of calories, not that many. So the liver will hold a wee bit. The rest must go somewhere, right? I don't poop it out. It doesn't magically disappear. It's not because, oh, I have a fast metabolism, I can eat whatever I want, and just magically poofs off. It doesn't do that. The body has to store it somewhere, because what we're called thermodynamics. Now, thermodynamics is basically physics. And the first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but transported from one state to another. So if the energy's in there, and you're not storing it in the cell to do something with, it's got to go somewhere else, and that will basically be converted into fat cells. So the fat that you have in your body came from eating more energy than your body could store intermuscularly, right? Intermuscular, in the cell. Cells are full, Or we'll talk about this in another video about insulin resistance, but the cells are full, or the cells will not let any more energy in. The rest will go, right, you know what, we'll store you as fat. We'll turn that into with glycerol, a fatty molecule, triglycerides. We'll talk about that later. All right, so that's where it goes. So whenever we want to burn that fat, we have to tap into that fat reserve. All right. So when we want to tap into the fat reserve, we've got to eat less food. So we tap into this stored energy, which will then be converted back into glucose. Right. Yes, the fat will be turned back into glucose, which is carbohydrates. So fat can be turned back into glucose or carbohydrates, which is why the keto diet is so successful, because if you're not eating any carbs, your body's going to make its own energy from the fat that you've stored from the too many carbohydrates that you initially ate. Does that make sense? Right? So you're going to turn them back into glucose and you're going to put them back into muscle anyway. Right? It just takes a wee bit long to do that, which is a thermal process, which is a fat burning process, because it's a metabolic process. All right? So that's why it's so good at burning fat. But anyway, I'm digressing a wee bit here. So we want to think about that hydration. So if we stay hydrated, we don't get headaches. Headaches, 99% of headaches, people, is dehydration. Right? The hangover headache is dehydration. If you're going out drinking before you go out, hydration drink. As soon as you come home, hydration drink. When you wake up, hydration drink. No hangover. Well, you're a wee bit queasy, but you'll not have the headache. It's dehydration. Right? It always is. That's the key to everything. So that's what we're feeling. So if you're getting a headache during your fasting window, you need more sodium, you're dehydrated, or you've drank too much water without the ability to retain it, right? So drinking loads of water is perfectly fine as long as there's salt there somewhere to retain that fluid. Otherwise you just keep peeing the whole thing out, all right? That's why also as well too, if we hydrate successfully, guys, people always ask me, and I know they're not wrong, if I'm losing a lot of weight in this challenge, is it mostly water weight? Well, it would be water weight if we just did keto without sodium. It would be water weight if we just did fasting without sodium. But it's not, because we're keeping the body hydrated. So that's why you should not rebound after these 5 days, because the rebound is usually fluid. And when you rebound from fluid, the body goes, shit, that was difficult, that was challenging, that was dangerous. I'm going to hold more fluid, just in case this time with no fluid or electrolytes or some way to retain the water happens again. The body's basically a survival machine, and that's what it's going to do. So that's why we need to stay hydrated all the time, right? So your body will feel better, will function better, and you'll have less hunger. You've heard people saying, if I'm hungry, take a glass of water to fill you up. Well, that expands the stomach, and the ghrelin hormone releaser sits on the top of your tummy, and basically if you expand it, it switches off, it feels comfortable. When it contracts, the wee ghrelin hormone can release better. But again, it's dehydration. It's really important to hydrate. Now, if you want, you don't necessarily need to do the one that I talked about with apple cider vinegar, but the apple cider vinegar is very good for mobilizing fat cells, which is what we're looking to do. Also to neutralize stomach acids. Because we've got a long time in no food. When we do bring that food in, we want that gut microbiome to be working pretty well from a digestive point of view. Alright, so that's basically what we're looking for there as well too. I know I don't want to overload you with information, guys. I'm trying to keep those videos short, but some of the information is very important for you to understand. So even if you need to listen to this again, right? Again, there's no need to sit down and watch these videos. Just listen to them in the background. There's nothing to see except my beautiful face, but you can listen. Just listen. If you're in the car, if you get the headphones on, you're going for a walk, and just listen. All you need to do is hear the information and retain it. Listen to it again a couple of times. But this is really important for any diet that you're doing. You ended up, oh, I just got hungry. No, you didn't. You get dehydrated because you were eating less carbs than you were used to. Right? We'll also talk about how not understanding this principle is detrimental for people who use the scales. If you don't understand how this works, and I'll give you an example. Let's say we do the keto challenge Monday to Thursday, and let's say you do keto, right? And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you have no carbs. Calories are 1,500. Saturday and Sunday, you still eat 1,500 calories. You haven't gone over your calories, but you've introduced some carbohydrates. You will weigh about 4 pounds heavier on Monday. You get the same calories because the carbohydrates that you brought in are now holding intramuscular fluid. Every gram of carbohydrate will hold about 3 or 4 grams of water. So if you had 100 grams of carbs on the Saturday, 100 grams of carbs on the Sunday, still the same calories, you're going to be up nearly about 5 or 6 pounds because of the fluid that the carbohydrates absorbed into the muscle. It doesn't mean that you get fat. It means that you're weighing heavier because there's fluid retention inside the muscle, not fatter. Does that make sense? You can't get fatter as in store fat because your calories were the same. Does that make sense? And this is the stuff I need you to understand if we're going to be really successful in what's our objective here? Losing weight and keeping it off.